Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program and we're studying chapter 17 in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled Eliminating Fears. Are You Really Scared? This is where you learn about what is causing the fear and then how to actually eliminate it from the mind. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. And at the same time, I'll invite you to join for meditation. We start each one of our classes with a meditation. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting, which you guys are welcome to participate in if you like. And then I'll come in with some guidance. There'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet. We'll be meditating together, and then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start our class of helping you to understand how to eliminate fears. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you might decide to pull up a cushion or a chair, maybe a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair, any of these kinds of things. These are all great for learning online. And then, like I mentioned, I'll just start with the chanting, and then I'll be back with some guidance after that. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Hotang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatavapmanu Sarang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาคะวาพุทธังมหาคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาคะวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone that's here in Zoom. Welcome to everyone who's joining us through Facebook or YouTube. Welcome to our class today. I'm going to do something a little bit new here before I get started with our class. I'm going to launch a poll here in Zoom. And if this is working the way that I think it is, there should be 2 questions on your screen for those of you guys in Zoom. And it gives you a chance to answer that yes or no. If you guys could answer this would actually help guide the class today, because depending on what you guys are answering as this poll, it's going to guide how I actually teach the class today. So it looks like there's one person who's responded so far, so it must be working to a certain degree. Okay, getting more and more people here that are answering this. Okay, it looks like the vast majority of folks have actually answered. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and end that. All right, so that actually worked the way that it was supposed to work. So I'm not sure if what I just did works. I actually shared the poll with all of you guys that are in Zoom so you guys can see the results of it. So the question I asked is whether or not you guys have learned the Four Noble Truths with me or not. And all of you guys answered yes. And then I asked if you need a refresher on this or not. And 75% of you said, no, you don't need a refresher. So that's going to guide what I'm actually going to do for today's class, because typically when I teach this topic, what I do is I give you guys a refresher on the Four Noble Truths, because it's important to understand what's causing the fear before you actually understand how to eliminate it. And since only one of you guys need a refresher on that, what I would like to recommend for the person who needs a refresher, and I don't know who it is because it doesn't show me, is that if you use the YouTube videos or you use the podcast, there you can get a refresher on the Four Noble Truths. And of course, you're not going to be doing that right now, but at some point, in the coming week or so, you might decide to go to YouTube and be be able to refresh your memory on the Four Noble Truths, because this is really helpful for you to be able to learn and grow and develop. Let's see. Teacher, I'm the one who said they need a refresher. I know the Four Noble Truths, but you can never get too much. Oh, I see. Sure. So you're good. All right. Excellent. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that feedback. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right into explaining to you how to eliminate fear. And this is actually going to make the class very short. We're not going to actually be probably studying very long. It's going to be just the questions from you guys. So what I typically do is I help people to understand the Four Noble Truths here. And first, there's the three universal truths that an individual learns. And you guys have all learned this with me. And then I help you to understand what craving, desire, attachment is. And then there's the Four Noble Truths themselves. And what you walk away with is you understand that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing this. Because sometimes people look at fear as, what is the issue? And yes, fear is an issue. That is the problem. But you need to penetrate into it and understand what's the cause of it. It's the mind craving. It's desiring. It's clinging or holding on. It's craving this permanence. So once you understand that that's what's causing the fear, then when I explain to you how to eliminate it, it's going to make complete sense to you, right? Of course, first of all, there's understanding breathing mindfulness meditation as part of the Eightfold Path that you like to practice right concentration, and you're practicing breathing mindfulness meditation regularly on an ongoing basis. That's the proactive way to train the mind to let go. And then there's generosity, training the mind to give and share more than is strictly required in any given situation. These are proactive ways that you're training the mind to let go, because the mind's craving that permanence. And then whenever discontentedness is arising, you would like to cut it off and let it go. And you're using right mindfulness from the Eightfold Path to be able to help you notice when there's fear that is coming. And that's going to show up as a bodily sensation first. And you're going to need to get more and more in touch with the bodily sensation so that you can know that this discontentedness is about to arise. Whether it's conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, you're going to have some bodily sensations that are occurring prior to this discontent feeling arising. So now when that discontent feeling is arising as a bodily sensation, if you can notice it there, cut it off and let it go. And if you miss it as a bodily sensation and it becomes a feeling and now the mind is fearful, you can try to cut it off and let it go there. And you can even redirect the mind. These are all things that I've taught you guys in the past. Well, now what I'm going to share with you is the way to actually eliminate your fear is to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment by putting the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of fear and explain to you how you would do this. And I taught this back in chapter 13 as well, but I talked about it in relationship to all cravings, desires, attachments. We talked about using discontentedness as the red light on the dashboard of your car. And now when you see that the mind's been discontent, you look inward and try to figure out what is it that the mind is experiencing as a craving, desire, attachment, and you put the mind in that situation. Well, this works perfectly for any fears, because if you notice that you saw a snake on TV or you saw a snake in your backyard and all of a sudden this fear came up, you know, after cutting that off and letting it go, you need to look inward and see what's the craving here. The mind is craving to never see a snake. It permanently doesn't want to see a snake. And what the mind thinks it can do is push this away. It thinks that that's how it's going to solve the problem, that it's just going to avoid snakes. That's the aversion. And it's not going to be possible. As long as you're in the world, you're going to see snakes and spiders and mice and different things like this. And if you just tried to push these things away, it's not going to actually solve the problem. So where you notice that the mind is fearful seeing that snake in your backyard, now you would like to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. You might start looking at pictures in a magazine or on the internet of snakes. And now you slowly desensitize the mind to this particular contact. And now as you're looking at pictures on the internet or on a magazine, you're going to notice that potentially fear or some kind of uncomfortableness is going to start arising. And you're going to need to cut that off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. And after you do that a few sessions where you've looked at pictures and you notice that the mind is just completely comfortable, there's no discontentedness whatsoever, you increase the stimulation. Now you might go to a museum or somewhere where they have preserved snakes, that they're not alive, but they're essentially there and you can see them. And now you notice the mind, you observe the mind. If there's any fear, is there any uncomfortableness? And if there's anything there, you cut that off and let it go. And then you take it to the next level. Maybe you go to a pet store or to a zoo where there's actually real live snakes. And now you can see those snakes, experience the impermanence, put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, because it has this fear. Whenever it sees a snake, this fear arises. So you're going to need to put the mind in the situation and train it like, hey, you're going to see snakes every once in a while, and that doesn't mean anything bad is going to happen to you. That if you understand the natural law of karma, that if you make wise decisions, then you're not going to experience any unwholesome results. You're going to experience wholesome results or wholesome karma. And because you're not causing harm to this snake, there's no harm that's going to come to you. So you can sit there and do different times at the zoo or at the pet store, and you can have contact with these snakes and train your mind to let go of this craving to never see snakes. You can do this with spiders or any kind of being like that. Let me give you another example. Let's say you were afraid of heights and you were deathly afraid of heights. Well, just never going up to a certain level isn't actually going to be helpful. It's going to be paralyzing, because if you go to a shopping mall or you go to a corporate job or you have some other type of thing that you're doing, if you're going up to a higher floor in a building or something like this, or you're climbing a ladder to change a light bulb in your house, this fear is going to hinder you from being able to conduct yourself in day-to-day life, and you're going to experience discontentedness. And just avoiding going up into a high place isn't actually going to help you. So you would like to go to maybe like a mall where there's like a first or second story, and you can look over the side. And now train your mind to be peaceful and content in that situation. You might need to do that a few times. And then ultimately, over multiple sessions, you go up higher and higher and higher until ultimately you can go up to higher floors and you can look over and there's no fear whatsoever. And you can start climbing ladders and you can start doing other things where the mind is completely comfortable with this. There's a whole host of fears, and you're going to need to look at any fear that's coming up in the mind and figure out how to put together a plan to desensitize the mind. Because at some point, the mind is held on to the perception that if I see a snake, a spider, or a mouse, that's something bad, and now there's going to be some harm that comes to me. You need to eliminate that conditioning and purify the mind. Or the mind has this conditioning, it's clinging to this idea, this perception, that if I go up in a high position, something harmful is going to happen. And you need to show the mind that no, that's not the actual case. And then there's even things like fear of death, where the mind can have a fear of death. And you would like to put the mind in this situation. And of course, you're not going to kill yourself to be able to do this. So what you do is you do reflection on death, or contemplation of death, where you sit down quietly, closing your eyes, and for about 10 or 15 minutes, you envision that you've actually died. You confront this, where maybe a police officer is delivering news to your family, or maybe a doctor or nurse is delivering that news. And now you just play it out like you're a fly on the wall. You're not aspiring to die, and you're not planning what's going to happen when you actually die. Instead, you're just trying to convince the mind as if you have died. You're confronting this death. And now when you go through this experience of maybe your family gets this news, they do whatever they're going to do, they maybe coordinate a viewing, a funeral, maybe there's a burial or a cremation or whatever it is, you play this whole thing out. And you observe the mind and see what the mind's doing. And if any discontentedness is arising, you cut it off. And you might experience grief or sadness or frustration or anger or some other emotion like this. And when you're noticing that, you're going to need to cut this off and let it go. And this is why I'm teaching you this now, about 4 or 5 months into this program, because you need to have had the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity on board, so that when you're experiencing something like this, putting your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, you're triggering that craving. And now discontentedness is going to potentially arise. And now you would like to cut it off and let it go if your mind's been trained to be able to do that. And now as you're doing that, and you regain your composure, you may need to do this again. You might need to do it 2 or 3 or 4 times until you get to a point where there's no discontentedness whatsoever, not even the slightest uncomfortableness in the mind. And this might take multiple sessions. You might even notice that at the end of this session, if you had truly died, there are certain things you wish you would have said to certain people that you never said to them. Or there are certain things you would be interested to ask them that you never asked them. And if you had truly died, you would really want to know the answer to those questions. And if you have things like that that come up, I suggest you explore that. That when I did this for myself and for my grandmother and my mother, I realized there were certain things that I never said to my grandmother and my mom, and there were certain things that I never heard from them that I would like to ask them. So I just picked up the phone and I called them. After I regained my composure, like a day or two later, I just picked up the phone and called them and talked to them and said, "Hey, Grandma, I've been always meaning to ask you this, or I've always been meaning to tell you this." And by the time I did that, I cleared all of that out, that I didn't feel like there was anything still hanging, that if they would have died at any moment or I would have died at any moment, there's no craving, there's no desire, there's nothing that I wanted to hear, there was nothing that I wanted to say to them, that I eliminated that. Because not only can you do this to eliminate the fear of your own death, you can do it to eliminate the fear that you have maybe of the people around you dying, your life partner, your children, your parents, all these different people, your different siblings and people like this, even pets. If you have pets that your mind is fearful when they die, you can do this for them as well. And this will arise certain things in your mind, and you're going to need to use your mindfulness to be aware of this. And now you can take action on that, because this death, it's going to come visit you one way or the other. It's going to either sneak up on you and catch you by surprise, and it's going to feel like somebody pulled the carpet out from under your legs or someone chopped you off at the knees, because it's sneaking up on you. Or instead of allowing this death to come sneak up on you, you can go visit it. You can go confront it. You can say, "Yeah, death, I see you over there. I'm going to come visit you." And you're visiting death on your terms. You're not allowing it to come sneak up on you. You're choosing at a particular time when you know your mind is comfortable and stable and you don't have a whole lot of things going on in your life. You go confront this. And then you go talk to death, essentially, is what you're doing. You're confronting death. And now you can get comfortable with death and the impermanent nature of this body, in the impermanent nature of other people, that these other beings are all impermanent. And as you're slowly doing this, it'll train your mind to let go. Because I did this in my early 20s, my mid 20s, with my mom and my grandmother. And ever since then, for the last 25 years, it felt like all the extra time that I spent with them, it was just bonus time. My grandmother is 101 years old now. And ever since these last 25 years, it just seems like every time I talk to her, every time I spend time with her, it's bonus time, because I convinced my mind that she had died a long time ago. And same thing with my mom. By the time my mom died in 2017, there was no grief, there was no sorrow, there was no sadness, because of course, I loved my mother, but it's not love that causes the discontentedness. It's craving, desire, attachment. So when my mind let go and I got that phone call eventually that my mom said she was going to be dying, I was completely comfortable with that, and I understood, because I understood impermanence. So you can get to the point where not only do you not have any fear when death is coming to visit you or visiting other people, that you can get to the point where you don't have grief and sorrow and pain and displeasure when you're experiencing the death of somebody close to you. And this is to train your mind to let go and not have attachment. And this is called contemplation of death or reflection on death. And this will help you to eliminate any fears that are in the mind of your own death or the death of other people, because death is going to come visit you. And if you don't do any work and you try to avoid it and you have aversion to death, as you get closer to death, you will fear it, and you might have sorrow and grief and pain and displeasure as you're getting closer and closer to it. But if you do some work like this, by the time you get to death, you'll be completely comfortable, and you just know that it's part of the natural cycle of life, that we're all going to die. That's the one thing that every single one of us have to do, is we have to die. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everything else in our life is truly optional. Whether we work, whether we take care of our family, whether we have a car or a motorbike, or what jobs we do, all of that is based on our own choices. But whether we die or not, we're going to do that regardless. It doesn't matter. This being is going to die. So you would like to be best prepared for that. And this is one of the ways to do that. And then that way you can live the whole rest of your life without this overwhelming fear of death. So these are some of the fears that are common that I share with you guys here as examples. But what I'd like to do is just open up to all the questions that you guys might have about this technique, if you'd like to ask about that, or if you have certain fears that you're not quite sure how to do what it is that I'm describing, because this will work in about 80 or 90% of the situations, and you can do this, but there's some rare situations where you're not going to necessarily be able to put the mind in that situation, but I have some other options for you that you can consider. So if you'd like to talk about this, either understanding the technique that I'm talking about, or if you'd like to share one of your fears and get help to make sure that you're on the right track about how to eliminate this, you can share that. And you can put this into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So is there anybody that has anything you would like to share or ask questions about? Okay, so we have something coming in here from Fonia. Let's see. I'm retiring this week and a leaving party has been arranged for me and my coworkers at work. I would like to enjoy the occasion, but I'm fearing being the center of attention and if I will get upset. Okay, so Fonia, first of all, congratulations on your retirement. That's a big step forward. Wonderful for you. This particular thing is going to happen, right? So you don't have to put the mind in the situation because it's actually going to happen for you. So what you would like to be able to do prior to that is do your breathing mindfulness meditations, do your generosity, do your loving kindness meditations, just really prepare the mind. But if you have any cravings, desires, attachments in there, you're going to potentially experience the fear. And when that's coming up, cut it off and let it go. And where this is coming from is a craving to not be the center of attention, right? This is perhaps part of your personal existence view where the mind's clinging and wanting to be perceived a certain way and part of the central desire as well. So you're not going to necessarily be able to do something between now and then that's going to have you be fear-free in that situation, but you're already going to be in this situation. So now being in that situation, do work ahead of time so your mind's best prepared, and then in the situation just cut it off and let it go, and cut it off and let it go as it's coming up. And if you're noticing that there's a lot of fear there, then after a few weeks, see if there's a situation where you can do this again. Like here in these classes, we sometimes have, like on Saturdays, where we're doing the Pali Canon English study group where you can read. This is a great way to put your mind at the center of attention and everybody's focused on you reading. Or you go to an event where there's public speaking and maybe you need to speak up on a microphone or something like this. You're putting the mind in that situation. So whenever you're in a situation, try to go ahead and put your mind in that situation regularly so that now you can train your mind to let it go. But you've got this situation coming up, so this is excellent for you. In any situation where you're in, where you can potentially recreate that, do that again and just keep doing it until the mind finally lets go. Excellent. And again, congratulations to you. Helena, are there any major fears that you had to let go of other than the fear of death of you and your family? I had the fear of death for myself that I had to let go of, and I had a fear that my grandmother and my mom would die because, they were really close to me. I had a fear of snakes at one time. Yep, I had a fear of snakes. Very afraid of snakes at one time. I was actually afraid of heights a little bit. I had to let that go. Had a fear of being poor and homeless because when I grew up, we were very poor when I was very young. And I had to let that go. And one of the things that I did unintentionally, but I did it, is I was unemployed for 2 years essentially, and I wasn't making any income. And I had to train my mind that that was okay. And that was very hard. That was a very difficult period of time, thinking that I was going to be poor or homeless or something like this. So that was something that I needed to do. And I even envisioned myself being homeless at different times. So that ultimately helped the mind to let it go. So yeah, there were definitely fears like that I needed to put the mind in that situation in order to be able to let them go. Okay, let me see if we have any questions on Facebook or YouTube. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions on Facebook or YouTube. Looks like Helena has a question. Let's see if your mic's working. You can unmute yourself. If you have something though, you could put it in the chat if you like. I'll wait for you. Okay, she's going to put it in the chat. And for you guys in Facebook, YouTube, you guys can also... Oh, okay, Helena. So Joe can hear you. So, okay, it's mine. It's on my side. Let me fix this. Okay, I know exactly what this is. Sorry. All right. Thank you, Joe. Okay, now I'll be able to hear you. Go ahead, Helena.
Okay, can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you so much, Joe.
Okay, so I know, David, that you have explained that, but the mind still needs to understand better. The natural law of karma says that no harm will come to us if we don't harm, right, others. But if we don't have wisdom, sometimes harm can come to us. So if Helena right now visits, let's say, Myanmar, which is at war, then she could possibly be harmed, right? Because there's a war in that country.
Right, because harm is going to come to you when you're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, or unknowing of true reality. And anytime you're making decisions through any of those, then this is going to produce unwholesome results in your life. So if you make an unwise decision, yes, harm can come to you. So when I say if you're not causing any harm, no harm will come to you, this is like when you're putting your mind in the situation that it fears. Like if you're experiencing heights, right? If you're 3 or 4 or 5 levels up, you need to be able to remind yourself that, hey, I'm not causing any harm here. All I'm doing is looking over the side and no harm is going to come to me. Or if you're looking at a snake in an aquarium or at a pet store, you need to remind yourself that, hey, I'm not causing any harm. There's no harm that's going to come to me. But anytime you make decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, there's the potential for harm to come to you because now you're making unwise decisions that are leading to unwholesome results.
Okay, so the mind is afraid of making wrong decisions.
Okay.
That's the fear.
Okay, so you're going to make some unwise decisions between now and enlightenment. You're not going to be able to avoid that. And what you're going to need to do is each time you make an unwise decision, you're going to need to be comfortable with what you're experiencing and be able to look at it and not crave permanence for things to be a particular way permanently. As long as your mind's craving this permanence, when you're making mistakes or you're making unwise decisions, you're going to experience discontentedness because you're discontent. Because if you have a craving, desire, attachment, and it motivates unskillful conduct, for example, and let's just say you were speaking harsh to your dad. I don't know, I'll just create an example. Let's just say you spoke harsh to your dad, and now you get off the phone. Now you've got that unwholesome karma to deal with that your dad, now you spoke harsh with them. But now you also have to deal with your own emotions, that you feel guilty and shameful that you talked with your dad in that way. And now the next level is you realize that you're discontent and you've made a mistake, and now you're discontent because you're discontent. This is like the layering of cravings, desires, attachments in the mind, where there can be layers of discontentedness. So you'd like to get to the point where each time you make a misstep and you have a mistake in your life, that you just understand that, hey, I'm a work in progress, that I'm going to experience these mishaps from time to time, and let me just look at it and see what wisdom can I cultivate. And if you need your teacher's help, that's where you reach out. So this situation is going to occur, so you don't have to induce it to occur because it will occur on your journey to enlightenment.
And what if Helena did something really stupid? Like if she went to a dangerous area without knowing, lack of wisdom, and for example, she would get killed and therefore not achieve enlightenment.
That's the results of your decisions. And that's one of the reasons why you would like to think through all your decisions before you go forward. So you used a perfect example, like going to Myanmar, probably would be unwise to go there right now. And you know that. So that's why as a wise individual, you're not interested in being fearful of any potential decision that you may or may not make, but instead just live in the present moment, and any decisions that you're about to make, be sure that you look at those and that you make wise decisions. So rather than being fearful of the hypothetical decision that you may make at some time in the future, that's the mind living in the future. Bring it back to the present moment. Right now, you're making certain choices about where to stay, where to eat, what to do, and just in the present moment, make those wise decisions. And anytime you come across a decision that you're not quite sure of, that's where you can always reach out to people around you and get their impressions and get their thoughts, and you can research. You're a smart person. You'll take your time to figure out what is it that you could do to make a wise decision here.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. There's some students who joined us since we started chatting. Those of you guys that joined us, basically I just opened up to the students to see if they have any fears that they would like to talk about and put together a plan for how to eliminate them. That's what I taught today, is how to eliminate fears. So we just had kind of a short class today. I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to end class here by thanking all of you guys for joining, and at the same time invite you to our future class, because next Sunday in this book we're going to be in chapter 18. It's titled God's creative action, you have free will. This is where we're going to learn all about this being of God. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to have a relationship with God if you'd like and still get to enlightenment. Or if you're not interested in having a relationship with God, how to get to enlightenment that way too. Because it's not God who determines whether or not you get to enlightenment or not. So you could actually choose to have a relationship with God or not. It's totally up to you. The Buddha didn't put God as a central role in his teachings because it's not God who determines whether you get to enlightenment. It's you that determines that in your choices and decisions. So you're at the center of Gautama Buddha's teachings, but it oftentimes helps to have an understanding of this being, because depending on how you've grown up, you might actually hate God. You might actually have this anger towards God, depending on what things you've been taught about God. Or you might be being interested to have a relationship with God, but maybe you're asking God for things and treating God like a genie in a bottle and constantly praying to God. So I'm going to teach you how to have right view. I'm going to teach you the natural law of karma. If you're interested in praying, I will teach you how to do that in a way that doesn't involve craving, desire, attachment. But again, if you're not interested in having a relationship with God, I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. So I'm going to help you understand this being so you can choose for yourself. And I can help you either way, whether you have a relationship with this being or not. And that's what we're going to be discussing next Sunday. This Wednesday, we're going to be doing meditation together, and I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys might have. And then on that following Sunday as well, this Sunday coming up, I'm going to be starting a retreat here in Chiang Mai that you guys can attend in person, or you can attend through the live stream or Zoom, where it's all the teachings that are going to help you get from the first stage of enlightenment to enlightenment itself. We're going to go through step by step. I'm going to spend an entire hour and a half on each individual fetter. I'm going to explain to you what the fetter is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated. This is what you need to purify from the mind in order to get to enlightenment. So there's 2 retreats that I teach each year. There's one in January that gives you everything you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And then there's one in August that takes you from the first stage of enlightenment to enlightenment. And of course, you're not going to be enlightened at the end of the retreat, but you will have been exposed to all the teachings you need to be able to get to that. And then I have courses all throughout the year that feed into these. Every month I teach Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment. Every 3 months, I teach Harmony in Relationships. And then twice a year, I teach Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. And that all feeds into the retreats, where you learn how to get to the first stage of enlightenment and then enlightenment itself. So if you'd like to attend these, or you'd like to listen to them on the recordings, you'll be able to access those through our YouTube channel or through Facebook. They're not going to be on the podcast yet, but you'll be able to access them in YouTube and Facebook. And then if you attend live, you can ask any and all questions that you like. And if you're not attending live, you can always ask questions by posting in the Facebook group, sending me a private message, or scheduling personal guidance. And you can always ask questions in the various live classes as well. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.